This week on The Watchman, as Hamas leads violent riots against Israel to the south and Iran and Hezbollah threaten from the north, we're joined by the Israel Defense Forces international spokesman, and he has a message for Israel's enemies.
You may think that we don't know what you're up to. We see you, we hear you, we follow your actions, and if you're going to cross the lines, you will have business with us.
Plus, two top Middle East experts join us in Jerusalem to break down all of the latest news from the world's most explosive region and why it matters to you. It's The Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel only on TBN. And welcome to The Watchman. Israel's enemies are America's enemies. The same radical forces that seek to wipe Israel off the map have a bullseye on the back of the United States. And many times, Israel has done the work of the West in confronting terrorist and rogue regimes. We now have information coming to light that in 2007, Israel destroyed a Syrian nuclear reactor. Now, it was September 6th, 2007, and Israeli officials recently confirmed that yes, Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian dictator with the blood of hundreds of thousands on his hands right now in this Syrian civil war, he was developing a nuclear reactor with the goal of developing nuclear weapons. Now, Israel struck preemptively and took out that reactor. 8 Israeli fighter jets in 2007 destroyed that Syrian reactor, which, by the way, was being built with the help of North Korea. Now, folks, Israel did the world, the United States, the Middle East, a major favor in destroying that Syrian reactor. Number one, think about it. The Syrian civil war has already claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. Imagine if there was a nuclear factor involved, especially with Bashar al-Assad, who has shown no hesitation in using weapons of mass destruction against his own people. But number two, and more importantly, the fact that Israeli officials are now confirming that yes, we did destroy Assad's nuclear reactor is clearly a strategic move aimed at Iran. Israel is saying to Iran very clearly, we will not allow you to develop nuclear weapons. We will not allow an Iranian bomb, which, folks, would be an existential threat not only to Israel, but to the world. Let's look at the Six-Day War in 1967, when the Egyptian and Syrian armies were gathering at Israel's doorstep, vowing to wipe Israel off the map. Israel acted preemptively, decisively, and won a tremendous victory. And number two, 1981, again, Israel does the world a huge favor by destroying Saddam Hussein's nuclear reactor. And then fast forward to 2007, as we've told you, Israel is now confirming that yes, we destroyed Bashar al-Assad's nuclear reactor. Folks, the message to the Iranian regime could not be more clear. And there's no one better to talk to about those issues than Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus. He's the IDF's international spokesman, and he's also the head of the Israel Defense Forces social media arm. We sat down recently in Tel Aviv to talk about Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, Syria, and why it matters not only to Israel, but to you. Take a look. Well, Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us here in downtown Tel Aviv.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure.
Great to have you. Look, there is a shadow, I guess you would say, descending from Tehran across the region. The Iranian regime is expanding, whether it's Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq. Can you talk about the Iranian regime's goals for the region and the dangerous moves that they have been up to in recent months?
They continue to expand and to export their specific brand of extremism. Unfortunately, they're very good at what they do. They're industrious, they know what they do, they have experience, they have done it successfully with Hezbollah in Lebanon. We're talking about a foreign influence with very hostile intentions that is projecting its power into an area where it has no business to be.
Yeah, Jonathan, and that land corridor that Iran is forming from Tehran all the way to the Mediterranean, at Israel's doorstep.
You know, the issue with that is that Iran has been exporting weapons and arming Hezbollah, first and foremost Hezbollah, for a long period of time now. Hezbollah holds 120,000 rockets hidden inside houses in Lebanon, all of them aimed at Israeli cities. Now, they've been able to stockpile these weapons in complete disregard and violation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701. What worries us now is that they are trying to take these so-called dumb statistical weapons and turn them into guided weapons, where they have an accurate, much more accurate capabilities. We're sitting in central Tel Aviv now, right across from the military HQ, the Kiryat. If they would try to hit that with statistic weapons, they'd have to fire 30, 40, 50 rounds and maybe hit it. With precise munitions, it'll be 1 or 2, and it could be a confirmed hit. That's our concern, and we're seeing that the Iranians are trying to upgrade the weaponry that Hezbollah has, and they're trying to position their forward operating bases inside Syria. That is something that the IDF has said very clearly will not be tolerated.
Right. Now, Jonathan, you mentioned Syria. Can you tell us why that Iranian presence inside Syria is such a red line? I think of Hezbollah, which you mentioned. Syria has become a training ground of sorts for Hezbollah. They are creeping closer to the Golan. Why is that such a red line for Israel?
We stay away from red lines, and we try not to have them clear to our enemies. But I would say that the Iranian presence in Syria is a significant concern. Why? They already control southern Lebanon by Hezbollah, their militia. They already have significant influence on Lebanese politics, and they basically have a stranglehold over Lebanon. Our concern is, and what we've seen the Iranians try to do, is to establish another front on the Golan Heights. They tried to do that. They were encountered by, I think, very stiff messaging from the IDF. We sent very clear messages that this is an area where we will not tolerate. The 10th of February, we had an attempt, I would say a probe, testing our defenses, testing our readiness and vigilance and our military capabilities. I'm happy to say that that event, that Iranian aggression, the UAV that was, by the way, a copy of an American UAV, was sent, penetrated into Israel, immediately intercepted, and the message was delivered very forcefully to the Iranians afterwards that, listen, you may think that we don't know what you're up to. We see you, we hear you, we follow your actions, and if you're going to cross the lines, you will have business with us.
Yeah, message sent, message received. Israel's a small country, Jonathan, but as you've laid out, whether it's southern Lebanon, the Golan, Israel's enemies are attempting to gather on its borders. We take it further south, we have Hamas in Gaza. Can you talk about, I think one of the big takeaways from the 2014 war was those terror tunnels that Hamas is digging. Can you talk about where we are at with the terror tunnels and what the IDF is doing to fight back against them?
What we've done now is that we've turned the page. I wouldn't say that we've finished the chapter or the book, by no means, but we've turned the page on our ability to confront these terror tunnels. We have a new toolbox at hand where we now have technological intelligence and operational capabilities that allow us to detect from various sensors the tunnels, where they are, and then depending on the location, the proximity of civilian population, etc., we're able to target it. We have targeted and effectively destroyed 4 tunnels over the last 4 months, all of them penetrating into Israel, all of them aimed at delivering terrorists underground into Israel. The Chief of Staff, General Eisenkot, defined that as a main objective for the IDF to deal with on a strategic level. The best and brightest have come together, and I'm happy to say that we have had American assistance as well, funding, as well as bright minds from the US, helping us with finding technical solutions to, basically it's a fusion of different sources, right, that you have to fuse together to get a specific answer to a question: where's the tunnel and how can we target it? And now I think it's safe to say that we have those tools at hand, and it's a great thing.
Tell us more about the great Israeli technology in the battlefield, whether it's Iron Dome, fighting against the tunnels, cyber warfare. Tell us a little bit more about some of the advancements of the IDF in those areas.
Iron Dome is one such example. I think it's a great example of how we're able to harness bright minds and work together with American industries to produce a life-saving system. We constantly seek to improve, we constantly seek to adapt and develop new technologies. I think Iron Dome is perhaps the most vivid example because it's combat proven.
You touched on the American relationship, obviously Iron Dome. A little bit more for people at home, just so they know how deep that US-Israel cooperation runs. Give us a few more examples. I know there have been some training exercises recently here in Israel.
The best example would be the Juniper Cobra 2018 exercise that we just completed. It was outstanding. This was American forces, Army, Navy, Marines, and the Air Force from Europe, from Stuttgart, who came to Israel as part of the biannual exercise, which is about coordinating air defense. The Iron Dome, David Sling, Arrow, and other missile defenses that we have came over, drilled together. We had Marines fighting alongside Israeli paratroopers, conducting close quarter urban terrain training, live fire exercises, linking up, sharing their battle stories, really on the lowest level and all the way up to the national level. There's a very strong bond. We're happy to share our knowledge and very eager to learn from the knowledge that our American counterparts have.
Yeah, there's a genuine alliance, a genuine friendship, and it's great to see.
It definitely is, and it's something that we cherish and intend to maintain and strengthen.
Jonathan, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks again to Lieutenant Colonel Conricus for joining us. Be sure to check him out on Twitter for the latest updates from the Israel Defense Forces. Well, coming up, we are staying in the national security realm with two of the world's top experts to talk about what's happening in the Middle East, the good and the bad, and why it matters. It's the Watchman, it's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN. Stick around.
Wars, terrorism, boycotts, international condemnation, anti-Semitic lies. None of these things have been able to destroy the hope, generosity, courage, and ingenuity of the Jewish state. Israeli scientists and inventors are on the cutting edge of exciting breakthroughs in medicine, technology, and agriculture. For 70 years, Israel has faced overwhelming odds and miraculously triumphed. The Jewish people have not only survived, they have thrived. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. And the world needs to know the truth. This palm-sized snapshot of Israel at 70, Just the Facts, will help you share Israel's history and accomplishments with everyone you meet. Call Christians United for Israel at 210-477-4714 or go to kufi.org/facts to receive your free gift. Israel is not a problem for the world to solve. Israel is solving the world's problems. Facts matter, so help Kufi share the truth about Israel at 70.
And welcome back to The Watchman. National security for Israel, for America, how the two are linked is one of the main themes of our show. Israel's enemies are America's enemies, the same radical forces that seek to wipe Israel off the map, as we have told you many times, have that bullseye on the back of every American citizen and everyone in the West as well. We live in perilous times, so we brought together two of the world's top global security and Middle East experts to make sense of it all. Harold Rode and Dan Diker are two of the top experts at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. And we convened a Watchman all-star panel with these two top authorities to talk about all of the latest news in the Middle East. Take a look. Dan, I want to start with you. There's a shadow being cast. We talk about these problems from an American perspective. Iran, number one. There's a shadow being cast from Tehran across this region. Tell our viewers why it's not just a problem for Israel, but for the world.
You know, Eric, in 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini made a promise. And that promise was that Iran would not only cast a dark shadow across the Middle East, but across the entire world. They promised, in the words of Khomeini, to take over the Middle East and ultimately the entire world. And if we look at the Middle East today, Eric, the Iranians are keeping their promise. It was King Abdullah II of Jordan who said in 2004 that the Iranians are on the march to take over every country in the Middle East, and then they're going to look towards the United States and the rest of the free world and ultimately the whole world. And that's happening. Look what's happening in Iraq. The Iranians control Iraq. The Iranians are controlling Syria. The Iranians are controlling Lebanon through Hezbollah and other groups. The Iranians today are even weaponizing, financing, and directing the Sunni Hamas in Gaza. That's just the beginning of what King Abdullah II called the Shiite Crescent, or the radical Shiite Crescent.
And Dan, great point. He said that in 2004. This was before Syria. This was before the Houthis in Yemen. And now Iran has really fulfilled that prophecy, I guess you would say, from King Abdullah. Harold, can you talk about, and this question might be for an entire show in the future, But as brief as you can, I guess, talk about the ideology. You're such an expert in this, Harold, the jihadist ideology. Talk about the ideology that drives Iran's policies here in the region.
Iran is the head of the Shiite world, and the Sunnis, they're the largest group. They're about 86% of maybe the 1.5 billion Muslims in the world. But in Iran is what is it, maybe 12% that is the Shiites. That's a lot of people, 200 to 300 million people, but still. Now, what's going on here? There is an internal war. There never in the Middle East is such things as bygones be bygones. The problem between the Shiites and the Sunnis started when their prophet Muhammad died in they believe in the year about 631 AD. Now, since then, since you can never put any problems behind you, that problem will fester forever. Whose Islam is right? And that is what is going on here. So the Shiites, headed again by the Iranian government, are trying to first, as Dan said before, they want to take over the Sunni world, make them into Shiites, and then take over slowly in the entire world. And if you look at their missile program, they're doing intercontinental ballistic missiles now, which will hit the United States of America. That's why it matters to the American people.
That's right. Iran has that large, great point, Harold, that large medium-range, short-range missile stockpile, but those ICBMs are not for Israel or even for Europe. They're for the great Satan,
yes,
for the United States.
Yes.
And Harold, you mentioned that Sunni, Shia squabbling and war been going on for centuries. I thought it was interesting recently, Dan, the new Saudi crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, compared Khomeini, the Iranian supreme leader, to Hitler, and even he was sounding the alarm about Iran's march across the region.
It was, Eric. It's a very important point that for the first time, as far as Israel, the nation state of the Jewish people is concerned, there has been a sea change for the moment in its relationship with the Gulf states, with Saudi Arabia driving the Middle Eastern Sunni Gulf state policy, and has actually partnered with Israel along with other states in the region that are amenable to Israel, like Egypt and like Jordan, to confront this Iranian nuclear threat. And it is a major nuclear threat, which is why the JCPOA, what was called the Iran deal, that was the architect of which was former President Obama, is so dangerous for the United States, and one that I know that Israel and the United States and are actually leading the charge to turn that deal back, either fix it or nix it.
Yeah. Gentlemen, much more coming up after the break. Harold and Dan both mentioned, folks, the improving U.S.-Israel relationship and alliance. We're going to talk more about that after the break. It's the Watchman, it's Kufi, only right here on TBN from Jerusalem. Stick around. If you love experiencing Israel through the Watchman, I want to invite you to experience it with me in person on November 5th through the 15th. I'll be here in Israel with Pastor John Hagee, founder of Christians United for Israel, and together we will introduce you to the incredible people and places you've seen right here on the show every week. Folks, you don't want to miss this incredible opportunity to see and experience Bible history and the prophetic miracle of modern Israel firsthand. This year is the 70th anniversary of Israel's rebirth as a nation, and I want you to join our Kufi team here as we celebrate this amazing milestone in God's plan. I'll be here to share with you some of my favorite places and stories in the land where Jesus walked. Visit the Kufi website at the link below or call the number on your screen to join me and Pastor John Hagee here in Israel this November. And welcome back to the Watchman from Jerusalem. We are talking to Dan Diker and Harold Rode about the latest developments in this region. Before the break, gentlemen, we were talking about the threats, obviously, Iran, Hezbollah, that are gathering, but good things are happening in terms of the U.S.-Israel relationship. Back on track, to say the least. Dan, the embassy is moving in May. Seems like a game changer.
Eric, it is a game changer. It's an historic moment for U.S.-Israel relations. It's the first time since 1995 when the U.S. Congress decided, on behalf of the American people, to move America's embassy to Jerusalem, and only President Trump has been able to actually make good on that promise.
It's U.S. law that the embassy must be moved.
Yes, sir. It's U.S. law. And what's really fascinating here is that the naysayers around the region and in the West said it's going to trigger bloodshed and violence. Look behind us. This is the eastern side of Jerusalem. It's quiet, it's stable, people are working. Jews and Arabs, Israelis and Palestinians are working together. It's the holy city for Christians, Jews, Muslims, for everyone, and it actually has brought the Arab world closer to Israel and has driven a wedge between them and the Palestinians, whom the Arab world is accusing the Palestinians of not getting with the program of President Trump.
Very interesting, Dan. I think that the Saudis, Egyptians, the Jordanians are much more concerned about Iran than they are Jerusalem right now in terms of threats. Harold, you've seen it all working in the U.S. government in previous years. You've seen it all when it comes to the U.S.-Israel relationship. Are we at a new, maybe a high point in the relationship right now?
Yes, without a question of a doubt. But I'd like to just go back to one thing that Dan said, which I think is really interesting. President Trump said, I've taken the issue off the table. What does this mean? And it's extremely important. The real problem has been that the Arabs have refused to recognize any type of Jewish rights in this land whatsoever. And when he says that they've taken it off the thing, it's like either you accept that Israel has a right to exist in some form or you don't. If it is a question of borders, there's something to talk about. But the other side is not willing to talk about Israel in any form. All borders are illegitimate. And so by taking it off the thing, either the Arabs are going to accept a Jewish presence here, that the Jews have a right to this land in some form, or not. If it is a question of borders, there's something to discuss about. If it is a question of existence, you can't negotiate about non-existence. Yeah. President Trump has made the other side have to come to the conclusion, either you accept Israel in some form or you don't.
Speaking of the Jerusalem embassy moving, now it was encouraging to me to see America step up and fill its role as the leader of the free world and set the tone. Now we see Guatemala moving its embassy, possibly the Czech Republic, other Latin American nations. Dan, could we see kind of a snowball effect here?
I think so, Eric. It's going to depend on which major powers are going to follow suit and follow the lead of President Trump, the United States, and move their embassies to Jerusalem. This will be a snowball effect, a domino effect. The entire continent of Africa is waiting online to see Prime Minister Netanyahu about the technologies that Dr. Roda is talking about. Right. He was the only foreign leader ever to address the ECOWAS in Liberia. Wow. Now,
that was a gathering of African leaders.
The gathering of African leaders, yeah. Netanyahu was the only non-African leader ever. And this is at the same time that the South Africans and the international boycott movement in Europe and some on U.S. campuses calling Israel an apartheid state. Well, isn't that the biggest lie in the world? Yeah. BDS, it's warfare. It's something that people of goodwill, American people, have voted down. They've given it a thumbs down, but it's something that has to be mentioned to be wiped out because it's a permanent type of anti-Semitism. It's a type of warfare. But the African people of the African continent, both East Africa and West Africa, are saying BDS is nonsense. It's silliness because we want Israeli technology. We want the Jewish people on our side. We want their water technology, life-saving water technology, agriculture, defense, emergency medicine,
cyber,
you name it.
All of it.
You name it.
Absolutely
so
amazing.
It's an extraordinary time, and I think it has religious implications, as you know, both for Christians and Jews.
Thanks again to Harold Road and Dan Diker for their great analysis and insights. Folks, be sure to check out the work of Harold, Dan, and all of the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, great experts at their website, which you see there on your screen. This is without a doubt one of the world's very, very top think tanks and research institutes when it comes to the Middle East, radical Islam, and why it matters to you. Well, up next, my final thoughts on why what happens in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East. It's the Watchman, it's Kufi, only right here on TBN. Stick around.
The Bible calls Jerusalem the city of God, where God has placed his name. Our fight in the defense of Israel and the Jewish people has only just begun. Your presence in this auditorium is a testimonial to the nation and the nations of the world that Israel is surrounded by friends in America that will stand with them against all odds. Your going to Congress is a righteous act in the courts of heaven.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are part of a movement right now. If you are here tonight, it is not by coincidence. Christians United for Israel is by God and for God.
King David said it this way, "Let God arise and let his enemies be scattered."
And welcome back to The Watchman, only right here on TBN. Folks, look, we hit some very heavy subject matter today, but our team here at Christians United for Israel believes that you would rather know than not know. The Bible says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." If you want to hear more of the kind of great analysis you heard today here on The Watchman, please join us in Washington, D.C. for our CUFI Washington Summit, July 23rd and 24th. You see there on your screen the special Watchman discount of only $75 in our nation's capital. While you're at it, don't forget our Christians United for Israel Tour, November 2018. Folks, the Bible says that the glory of the Lord will be revealed and the entire world will see it. Guess where they will see it from? Jerusalem. So join me, Pastor John Hagee, our CUFI leadership in God's city and God's land this November for an unforgettable tour. In the meantime, thanks for joining us this week here on The Watchman. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.